Let's unpack my second Huel shaker. The first question that obviously arises is why would you order a second Huel shaker? I already have another one, and this one is currently frozen since I already prepared a Huel. And according to Huel themselves, the company, you only should have the Huel in the fridge stored for about 1 day. After it probably goes bad. So therefore, since I already had mixed this, I just froze it because then it doesn't go bad. So the question might arise, why would you order a second Huel shaker? And the answer is this. I'm trying to do something that I call KETO Huel or low carb Huel. So I'm basically trying to accommodate, or not so much accommodate, but rather trying to implement a ketogenic diet with 25 to 50 grams of carbs a day with Huel. Why Huel? Because it's one of the biggest companies, and therefore there are a lot of factors that correlate with company size, such as quality of the shaker, for example. So now this is the second shaker, and because I now have the second shaker, let's actually again explore what the shaker is actually so good and what also made me decide to buy a second Huel shaker and not some other shaker. So first of all, I think Huel made a pretty good design job. So if you hold this in your hand, it actually has a little bit of weight, which is quite nice. Also, I think it will quite hold up a certain amount of time, because otherwise it could reflect negatively back on the company. And since the company is kind of big, at least compared to some other companies which maybe don't even have like two employees or things like these. I mean, you can order probably shakes like these from somebody who does this just as a side gig. Now we have a little bit of a card in here. We have the main shaker. The shaker is 1 liter in size actually. I found out by measuring it, by actually weighing it. So the 500 milliliter mark is here, and there is a sticker on here which you just can peel off. And I thought if I peel off the sticker, the mark of the 500 milliliters might be gone, but it isn't, because there's actually a slight dent in here, which you can see. So now I thought quite some time about either getting a second Huel shaker or a second other shaker, and then not using the Huel shaker and actually getting 2 other shakers. So basically it works like this. I want these shakers to be kind of, or these are the requirements, I would guess. So I want the Huel shaker to be also a water bottle. So now if it is also a water bottle, it has to also look kind of like a water bottle. One big advantage of these is that it is intransparent, so nobody can see what you're actually drinking, which is kind of nice, because then in places where not everybody should see what you're actually drinking, this could be an advantage, because Huel is actually not water. And in a bottle that is transparent, you can actually see that there is not water in there. So this was one major thing. The next thing is that I didn't really trust the other shakers. So let's compare this shaker, for example, to the shaker bottles of my smoothie mixer. So this is also something I could use. I already have a smoothie mixer, which also comes with 2 of these bottles, which is also kind of a previous version of having the minimal amount of stuff, which also doubles as a water bottle, and just random things like these, trying to implement them. And one of the problems here is that it is not fully secure. So you can screw it very tightly, and there is also a rubber, not a rubber lid, but it actually was filled too much, so now I have water on my desk. So with a shaker like this, what you could potentially do is get a shaker ball, which then replaces something like this shaker lid, and then you could just shake the thing within the shaker. There is only one problem. A shaker ball doesn't reach all of these edges, so I think this might create a problem down the line. With a shaker like this, a shaker ball will probably work a little bit better. Why? Because it actually doesn't need to hit all the edges, because there aren't so many edges where stuff can just get, well, stuck. So there, as you can see in this bottle, there is also a rubber lid in there, or whatever you call this, a rubber strip. And I mean, this mechanism here is quite fine, the screwing mechanism. But what I think is not quite fine is this mechanism. You cannot open kind of very easily. So let's imagine you have this in your backpack, and then you're biking, and then you have a bike accident, and then this one filled with fuel actually kind of opens up somehow, and then you have the fuel in your notebook, which is not very nice. So now the main idea is that you want to have something which is as secure as possible. So obviously the easiest implementation of having shaker bottles with me would be to use my shaker bottles already attached to my smoothie mixer, because I can use them as universal water bottles. I can also use them in order to mix Huel. I can also theoretically use them to mix self-made Huel, so basically nuts, vegetables, and just mix them together into something that you can also drink, which I already tried it, and I probably will also do in the future. But I needed something, at least in my mind, I needed something that was universal, that was transportable. Even though you could argue that taking Huel with you is not the most optimal solution ever. Why? Because you constantly need an additional supply of water. You could also argue, if you, for example, estimate 2 liters of water per day, so let's say in an emergency situation, and then you have already the 2 liters of water a day, and additionally you add the Huel powder, then this will not take away the water. So therefore, even though you are carrying now 2 liters of water, you're basically carrying all the food and the water. Of course, assuming that the food doesn't require additional water in order to process in your body. But the same is true for other water, not for other water, but for other food. So therefore, if you now think of an emergency scenario where you have to carry at least 2 liters of water, then you can carry also your food, provided you also take one of these 1.5 kilogram Huel bags with you, which actually are in here. Now, the reason now, so this is one of the reasons. Another reason is the design. We already discussed it. So let's take a look at the design and why it is so secure. So this is kind of rubbery material. This is also rubber. If you leave this in the sun for too long, this probably will vaporize in the future, maybe 5 or 10 years down the line. Then we have, of course, the upper thing, then the opening where you can just take the scoop and put your 2 scoops of Huel in. In my case, since I am trying to do the keto Huel thing, it's 2 scoops of Huel and then 2 scoops or 100 grams or 90 to 100 grams of nuts, which is the source of fats and also proteins I found to be the most useful for this kind of scenario, because you already can find them in the supermarket anyway. At the grocery store, you usually find almonds and hazelnuts in a squashed form. Not squashed, but mixed, grinded form. That's the right word. So now you take these 2 things, you add the Huel or the other things, or also 100 grams of nuts, and then you add this, and then you add this, and then you add water. And since you now still have to shake it, I wouldn't recommend, so I tried this a few times already, and I think the best solution is, if you want to do it quick, then add all the 3 components, and of course before the water. So the water has to be added before, that's what I'm trying to say, because otherwise the powder gets stuck here on the bottom. So therefore, first add in maybe the 500 milliliters, then basically the 4 scoops, and then you add maybe no water anymore, but try to shake it for the first time. But because it's not double the amount of powder, you have to shake it more. So this is what you then add, and then you shake it, and then fill it maybe up to here, and then shake it again. Because if you fill it up to the brim, you have the problem of that there is no space to shake it anymore. So then you can add this whole thing, and then fill it up with water, and then maybe shake it again, and leave a little bit of space in here for shaking it before then using it. And then there you go. You have basically your 2 meals a day. Why is this now so nice with the nuts? Because you can get it in powder form, just as Huel. It also makes the whole Huel thing more cheap, basically not as expensive, because nut powder is not as expensive as Huel. Another benefit is that you get them basically pre-packaged in 200 gram packs, which now, if we discuss the calories or the calorie content, is something that is very handy. In a 200 gram package of nuts, you have 600 calories per 100 grams. This means in total you have 1,200 calories. Now Huel has per scoop 200 calories. It's the same with also the other Huel powder. So the normal Huel powder, I have the black one, as you already saw. And now, if you have 2 scoops of Huel into one bottle, and you also add 2 additional scoops, basically 100 grams, into here, you have an equivalent of 600 calories for the nuts and 400 calories for the Huel, which now means you have exactly 1,000 calories, which now in combination with the other one, in total means you have 2,000 calories, 2 shakes. If you want to add a little bit more, then just add maybe half a scoop of Huel to each bottle, so a scoop of Huel in total, and this will probably still be in the range of the ketogenic range of 25 to 50 grams. Some people think it's up to 25 grams a day. Some people might consider this to be a little bit larger. It also depends on how active you are. But this is the reason in total I bought a second Huel shaker and not another shaker, even though I like things to be very black. I also already thought about spray painting them in order to be totally black, but the problem is, since you wash them so often, the paint probably will leave the bottle soon and then it will just not look as nice. In order to maybe get rid of the logos in the future, I already tried to heaten it up with a hair dryer, and I got already rid of some of this thing here. But, well, because I don't want to have a lot of logos in my life, like on the shirt or on the watch or on clothes in general, I maybe want to get rid of these logos on here, but I maybe will try in the future again, and that's why I bought a second Huel shaker.